welcome to episode 3 of the Follow Me Show with your hosts,
Drew
and Didi of Follow Me Realty. In this podcast, we discuss tips and tricks,
do's and do nots
of the modern real estate agent. So everything from
marketing
and social media
to
negotiation and the closing table. So today is part 2 basically of the part 1 when we talked about how to negotiate an offer. Well, this time we're going to talk about how to negotiate a contract that's already signed and you're already at the close or before the closing table, but after you've already signed the contract.
So when shit hits the fan, from your inspection or from your appraisal, when shit hits the fan, this is a renegotiation. So this is part 2.
And this is something that can definitely come up for you on the buyer side, seller side, etc. So, okay. Like Drew said, there are 2 different scenarios where you may have to come and renegotiate after you've already signed the contract. And the first one's going to be your inspection contingency. So in the state of Florida, for instance, you have typically between 10 to 15 days to perform an inspection as a buyer. And so as a buyer's agent, you're letting them know that they need to go ahead and get that inspection done. And from there, they need to determine if they want something done on the house, whether it's an as-is contract or a FAR bar contract standard. Either way, you do have the option to get an inspection done. And if something goes awry or, there's some major or minor thing that happens, the buyer might actually want to go ahead and say, hey, I need you to fix this to seller. But the seller might say, no, I'm not going to do that.
Or they might say, go fuck yourself.
Basically. And it can happen pretty much just like that. So as a real estate agent, you have to know how to handle that thing and how to handle that situation and what to say to the listing agent in a way where you can get your buyer to get the upper hand, or not necessarily the upper hand, but just like...
Yes, it's the upper hand. When you're negotiating, it's definitely the upper hand.
Yeah, and so I'm talking from a buyer's agent end, but at the same time, this as a seller or as a listing agent, you also want to make sure that your client is getting the best as well. So we're going to specify to the buyer's agent at this point because it's kind of what we did on part 1. So on the seller's end, we'll talk about that later on the listing agent side. But for right now, we are specifically talking about the buyer's agent. What do you do in this situation when an inspection doesn't necessarily go as planned?
Okay, so let me give you a amazing, great scenario. It's $450,000, right? You guys are under contract for $450,000. Appraisal comes in at 450, 451, whatever it is.
Right. Okay, so, because there are 2 inspection and appraisal.
Yeah, we'll talk about the appraisal there. So the appraisal comes in at 451 or 450. It's in the ballpark of what we need. You run an inspection, they're like, "Oh my God, you got some sewer problems." What do you do then?
Okay, so let's clarify what we're talking about. Let's say first, we're talking about the inspection because, again, you have between 10 to 15 days to have an inspection done. So if the inspection comes back and there's an issue like you just said with the plumbing, and plumbing is a major issue. That's something that you want to have done. Like, so for instance, when you have an inspection performed, there is a 4-point inspection where it basically covers all the bases, right? With an inspection, you have the plumbing, you have the electrical, you have the AC, and you have the... What am I missing? The
house.
Well, no.
I'm joking.
So there are basically 4 points that you just want to make sure you cover. And the roof. So
there you go, the roof.
Just making sure that everything is in working order. Well, let's say that there was an issue with the plumbing and something has to be... whatever. Let's say, for instance, the house has a septic system, which can happen more often on older homes or like a manufactured home. And you need to have, you do have a separate inspection for the septic system. Well, let's say that something happens with that. And the buyer is needing to come out of pocket and take care of something. But they're like, well, no, I'm not going to do that. There's no way. I'm not going to buy this house if it has something. Well, if you are the buyer's agent, obviously you want to go back to the seller's agent and say, or the listing agent and say, listen, this was an issue that I had on the home, or that my client had on the home. What will the seller do to compensate? But the thing is, the seller a lot of times will say, no, this was normally in 2017. You're writing on as-is contracts. So they're going to say, no, we're not going to do anything. That's why that house is the price that it is, or whatever. Whatever argument they want to use.
Let's back up. I'm giving you the scenario. 450.
Mm-hmm.
We have plumbing issues. What do you do?
Well, what does the 450 have anything to do with it?
So you went under a contract for $450,000. The initial contract was $450,000.
Right.
You got the appraisal. Boom, you're good.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're into the inspection, and you're having plumbing issues.
Right.
And let's say it's around 10, 15 grand worth of repairs.
Okay, understood what you're saying.
Yeah. So
well, there are two options
okay.
that you have now. You basically want to put it in the listing agent / seller's court at this point. They can do one of two things. They can reduce the price of the contract, and then you have your amendment, or addendum that says, okay, so instead of it being $450, because it's going to take anywhere between let's say it's like we said, a new septic system. And guys, this is going to be kind of rare on a $450,000 home that you have a septic system instead of just regular plumbing. But let's just say that is a really good scenario, though. Still.
Well, I mean, if it's in like a older state
or Wedgefield, too,
exactly.
Where that's kind of like farther east, where you might have that situation. Okay, so if that's the case, you have two options. As a buyer's agent, you would go back to the listing agent. You present them with the report if the buyers are okay with it, because they're the ones paying for the report normally, and you say, hey, listen, here's this situation. This needs to be tended to. The estimate that we're getting is between $10,000 to $15,000. So you give them two options. The listing agent needs to relay this to the seller, that they either can knock off the price, 10 to 15 grand, but more oftentimes than not, your buyer doesn't want you to do that. What they want to do is make sure they're going into a house where it's already wrapped up neatly with a bow, and they don't have to do anything. So what that means is they want it fixed.
Yeah,
so even
exactly.
Even if it's $450,000, instead of knocking off the price, because you got to figure,
because they want to walk in there like a brand new car.
Yeah.
Just turn the ignition.
Exactly.
And boom, you're good to go.
Also, if you are financing, it's not really making much of a difference in the short term.
Yeah.
So
gotcha.
They want to make sure
you're
that
talking
it's just
about
$50
a month.
You don't want to go into a home having to deal with those problems normally. So your buyer is normally going to err on the side of, hey, let's just get it taken care of. So, the first thing you want to do is go to that listing agent and say, this is what we want to go ahead and get done. The listing agent naturally might push back and say, well, no, this is an as-is contract. But I have to tell you, in that situation, that's kind of like a given. They have to do something, because that's a huge reason. And here's why. It's a huge reason to cancel the contract, and the buyer is within their rights to cancel the contract if the seller says no at that point. So that's one. And then for two, what's going to happen is they now have to disclose that information. If they have to go and relist the home because they're like, hey, I'm out if you won't do it, the seller has to now disclose that on their seller disclosure. And two, the next buyer is going to want you to fix that too. So either way, you either take care of it or...
So what you're saying is, when this happens, as the buyer's agent, you then have negotiation power.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. So as a buyer's agent, you want to know that you're representing them enough to know that too. Now, it's not something where you're trying to get over on the seller. You're just like, hey, this needs to get taken care of before I buy the house. So naturally, you're just going to want to make sure that it's taken care of before you move in.
So how would you negotiate that? What would you say?
Oh, it's really simple. That's a really easy, hey, here's the information based on the inspection report. So here's the proof. I'm showing you the report that it's saying that's what has to get taken care of. And they're either in or out. A buyer that's buying a home for that much money and then has to put 10 to 15 grand more into the home to fix something like that, that's a huge thing. To be honest with you,
thing. You're right.
The buyers might even want to say, hey, I'm completely out for something so big. But
well, I mean, sometimes they, you know how it is. They walk into the house and they're like, "Oh my God, this is my house," and then
True.
all of a sudden they're hooked emotionally.
Right. So it can go either way.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that plenty of times.
Yeah, for sure. But what's probably going to happen then is they're just like, hey, this has to get fixed before I'll even touch anything else. Now, you might have a few minor items. Normally, you'll see that buyers will want you to fix like minor things on a smaller price point. Or if they're a first-time home buyer, they kind of get a little nitpicky, just keeping it honest. First-time home buyers normally want you to fix everything. Well, hey, I noticed that there were a few holes in this wall over here. Are they going to patch that, et cetera, et cetera? So this situation, it is a bigger issue.
Much bigger.
Septic system.
How many contracts have we had collectively fail? because of that.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, it wasn't just the inspection. It was buyer financing and stuff. But we've had, I think, a total of collectively maybe 15 within a... If we were just tallying up all the time that it happened within maybe a 2-year period, 15 transactions fail. And it's not necessarily because we weren't doing our job. It's because...
It's like you said, the buyer's like, oh my God, I'm out of here. I don't even want to make an offer.
Right. Well, or you don't want to follow through on it. So a lot of times you'll see failed transactions happen from buyer financing, though. So that's a totally different subject.
I want to talk to you about your last closing that you had with before we opened Follow Me Realty. With
second to last. Don't mention any names.
Okay, no names.
No names, but I know what
But
you're
you had to
about.
work the magic. There was damages. There was a crazy owner.
Yes.
And you had to negotiate a lot for that.
Oh boy, oh boy. Okay, so that one I actually, interestingly enough, now I want to give you guys kind of a backdrop. I'm the most recent real estate agent of the two of us. So Drew did real estate and practiced real estate as a realtor and as an investor like 8 years ago. But I have the most recent experience with the way that the market is right now, with the way that clients are right now. So yes, I had this experience to go back to what we were talking about, where basically I was handling the seller side and the buyer side, and not because I represented the seller, but because the listing agent was not very knowledgeable about what he was doing. And quite honestly, the seller trusted me a little bit more. So I was negotiating on both the seller side and the buyer side, so to speak, but still had the best interest of my clients and explained that very explicitly.
And that's
to
a
the
red
seller.
flag. You don't want
You
the
never want to
seller's
do that.
agent calling you, so you got to be kind of cautious.
The fact that the seller had my phone number, she Googled me and said, hey, I need your help
Refer to
with this.
podcast 1.
Yes, because she found me very easily. That's not a situation that's typical. And normally you do want to refer back to the listing agent for this situation. But it is what it is. It did happen. So here's the situation. This was on the inspection. The inspection report came back for my clients, and I was the buyer's agent on this one. And it was all pretty minor things, like the garbage disposal didn't work. It wasn't anything major, so it was good. But I did have to go to the seller and say, hey, listen, here's the situation. Although I understand these things are minor, they're first-time home buyers, and they don't really want to have to go in when they have just a little bit of closing costs. Basically, you're doing what you do before even, when the contract happens, which is you're leveling with them. Being as honest as possible. You don't want to be very pretentious about things. Well, my client wants this and my client wants that.
Which you'll get a lot, by the way.
Yeah, and
you're gonna see that in the industry. You're gonna see a lot of pretentiousness.
Yeah.
Is that a word?
I don't know.
Pretentiousness.
A lot of I think so.
Okay.
Pretentiousness. So you will see that as a real estate agent. You'll see a lot of people that will not level with you. Won't be honest. And the thing is, guys, we're all human. We all want the deal to close just as much as the other person. The buyer, the seller, the title company, the mortgage company, the listing agent, the buyer's agent. So if you all remember, we all want it to close. The seller and the buyer. And them too.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So if you go into it saying, listen, guys, we all want this to close. How can we make this work? At the end of the day, it's all about leveling. So with that situation, with that almost newlywed couple, they were about to get married. You have to just say, listen, how can we make this work where it's going to be beneficial for everyone?
And also, too, with this deal, let me give you a little backdrop. They were looking at houses that were out of their price range.
Yeah.
And Dee Dee was able to negotiate You were able to negotiate them down.
10,000 down.
Yeah, 10,000 down. So because the seller wanted to move, they were in a situation.
They were buying a new construction home, and they wanted out, and so they did mesh very well with the buyers because she was a new teacher and the seller was already a teacher, so it was good.
And that's when you want to do your due diligence and say, hey, listen, my clients really love this house. What can we do?
Yeah.
How can we pull this off?
Something I didn't talk about the first time, actually, now that I think about it, is when you go to make an offer, one of the things that hold really well to this, to a seller's market, that besides the escalation clause, and the last one I said a kick-out clause, it's not a kick-out clause, it's an escalation clause. But something that can really help is if you have your buyers, as a buyer's agent, send in a personal letter to the seller to say, hey, this is a little bit about me. So telling them get personal. And even if you have to help them write it, screw it. Do it anyway. If they're not really good at their vernacular and you want to help them get the house in any way possible.
As a realtor, you're not really a realtor. You're a marketer. You're a psychologist.
Exactly.
You're a counselor.
You are a facilitator of information.
Yes, you're an all-around entrepreneur.
Yeah. So do whatever you have to do to get the sale for everyone, but that's not saying, oh, just do whatever you have to do for it to close. No, do what you need to do for all parties to be happy. And it's really simple. Everybody wants it to happen. I'm going to be honest with you, and this might be a little crass, but it's a lot like sex. Everybody wants it to happen, but you do have to foreplay it.
Yeah, you got to make sure the foreplay is involved.
Yeah, so
you're not going to just go in there and bam, bam, thank you, ma'am.
Exactly.
It's not gonna
You got to ease everybody into the situation.
Well, it will happen, but there's not going to be a second phone call.
Exactly, or a second date.
Exactly.
So basically, to come back to it, when you have to renegotiate a sale, whether it's the inspections and now we'll talk about the appraisal, what you want to make sure is that you're leveling with everyone. And if there are a few insecurities or a little frustration with the, like I was saying, the inspection not going through as planned, it is what it is. It's going to happen. So you just have to say, hey, well, this is what we're going to do, and we'll see what they come with. You have to make sure as a real estate agent, you're not too emotionally involved with the outcome, because if they decide that house is not for them, you are not by any means to try to sway them one way or the other. Guys,
your job
you're
is
there
to
to help
negotiate, show them the home.
Right.
And it's more, what did you say that one time? It's more like you're a lawyer.
Yeah,
you're not really there to be like, oh my God, they're going to sell themselves
emotionally
on
involved.
the house.
And you'll notice, guys, like when you get into real estate, as a new real estate agent, you'll notice that a lot of agents will get emotionally involved in a sale. And that's the worst thing you can do, because the whole reason you're there is...
I've been cursed out so many times from agents for putting in lowball offers because they were emotionally involved. They're like, oh my God, that's so offensive. I'm like, I thought it was just an offer. It's weird.
You're there to be the objective party. If you consider yourself more as a lawyer and say, hey, I'm here to just relay the information as objectively as possible, it'll be easier for you and for the agent. You're there to reassure them, give them the confidence that they're doing the right thing, and when they say, hey, I'm out, you go with them because you're supporting them and not that immediate outcome. And I'll tell you, with this particular, with the particular closing that we were just talking about, they looked at a ton of homes, and that was okay. And then they were under contract, went under inspection, canceled the contract, and went into another house that was better for them. And I just guided them along, and they even came to me and said, hey, listen, we're going to cool off for a little bit. To be honest with you, I think they wanted to go with another real estate agent because they were very subjective with the outcome. And what's going to happen is, guys, your clients might blame you for something not working out, even if it's not your fault.
And it could be the mortgage, the lender, it could be the inspection, but you're the one.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to look to you
are
because
the central hub.
You are the scapegoat, essentially.
You're the sacrificial lamb.
Yeah, and so
I'm
when
joking.
but
I
mean,
true.
That is how kind of
Joking,
how
not
it
really.
feels socially. So what I said to them when they said, hey, we're going to cool off for a little bit, what I said is, okay, no problem. I understand. You let me know if you're looking for anything else, because at that point I felt like this. If they really want a really good agent, because they had seen that I was negotiating the sale on the lending side, on the inspection side, everything for them, then you'll come back. And what ended up happening is they came back, they used the inspector that I recommended.
The very next day, actually.
That's true. It was
Yeah.
the very next day. They came back and they said, hey, we like this house. And there was no other agent that was willing to jump on it and get the information that I was able to get.
So let me explain to you from a bird's eye view of what happened with this negotiation. So they were under contract for a previous house, and it fell through. And they were heartbroken, devastated, and you're going to find that when people are buying their house, they're looking at a 20-year, 30-year investment. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are thinking like, "Wow, I'm gonna live here for a long time."
Or they're not thinking about it as an investment; they're thinking about it as a white picket fence, and they're going to raise their kids
as the American dream.
Yeah.
So what happened was the deal fell through, and then they're looking at DeAndrea or Dee Dee, like, "Oh my God, it fell through. It's your fault." That's fine. But anyway, the very next day they're driving around. They found something that was $10,000.
It was about $10,000 above their
the rent,
pre-approval.
and they're like, "Hey, we really like this house, but it's above my pre-approval." Then Dee Dee's like, "Hey, don't worry about it. Let me call the listing agent. Let me see what I can do." Bada bing, bada boom. 3 weeks later, we're at the closing table.
And what I said to the listing agent, and I will tell you guys, this is actually a perfect example. The listing agent, they said, okay, you're DeAndrea again? And I said, yes. And he said, you're the opera realtor, and here's where your social presence will come into play. Now, I didn't talk about this on the last one, but basically, as the opera realtor, it was a niche that everybody understood. They knew who I was. Even if they didn't know me personally, they knew me from LinkedIn, some from Twitter,
Pinterest, Instagram,
Snapchat even. So it actually held a lot of weight for that particular transaction. He said, wait a minute, I've seen you online. And so it made a difference because he did hold me to a different regard than he previously would have. And yes, it is biased.
And it's funny because they're going to look at your social accounts and they're going to see that you have 20,000 plus followers.
And they're not bots, they're real people you engage with.
And then they're gonna like, wow, oh my God, who is this person? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of weird when you meet them. They're gonna kind of act like you're a celebrity. It's kind of weird.
So
actually.
It does help with negotiations. It helps with the offers and all of that. And so anyway, so that's the whole what would happen if you had. Seriously, and from the inspection to anything that happens, you do have weight when you know how to level with the other party, whether you're the listing agent
and
or the
when you have
agent.
an online presence.
And when you have an online presence. And so, luckily, we knew how to use that to our benefit. Now, the second thing that might happen is when you are in an appraisal situation, and the appraisal happens right after the inspection normally. So before you have your conditional loan approval for your buyers, as a buyer's agent, you have your
And can
appraisal.
you break down what an appraisal is for people that may not know what it is?
Yeah. So an appraisal happens when a company will come out to the home and evaluate the value of a home and say, okay, based on the sold comps in the area and the active comps in the area, mostly they go off of sold, but they say, okay, this house and this house and this house with the same comparable information.
It's usually about 3, right?
Yeah, it's about 3. So
when I was doing it was 3.
This house, the subject is a 3-2. So then this house as a 3-2, and this one as a 3-2, and this one as a 3-2, saying 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom. These all sold for this amount. So this house with the same kind of features, etc., and they sold for this, is going to go for about this. So they are comparing on the just on paper aspect, and then also looking at the home, checking out the condition of the home. Is there any wood destroying organisms, otherwise known as mold, or anything like termites, anything like that. So they come out and say, what is the value of the home, looking at the structure and also looking at comparables. So an appraiser will always go out, and that lender from the buyer is sending that appraiser out. They have a few people that they can pull from.
So let me break it down. So basically, this is what an appraisal is for. Is boom, you actually, you're going to break that down.
And the appraisal is for basically how much can the lender give you as far as the lending is. So if the house, let's say we were talking about a $450,000 home, if the house is really worth how much the loan is, so can they really give it to you? So the appraiser will tell the lender, yes, it's worth this much, or no, it's not worth this much, or yes, it's even above how much you're giving the loan, which is good because then you go into the house with equity. That's what the appraisal is for. Sometimes, though, you'll have an appraisal that'll come back $10,000 less than the contract price, and that's when you have to renegotiate the contract. So
yes, but I will say this too. And when I was a new agent, this used to mess me up because I was like, why are they listing it for $199,000 when the appraisal came in at $175,000?
yeah,
But that also drives the market upwards.
only if it actually can sell for that much.
But
so that's a bit frustrating.
Yeah, but in a seller's market,
Yeah,
it can, and that's when supply and demand comes into play.
And if the buyer is willing to pay that money over and say, I don't care, I'm going to pay.
What house did you sell? The townhouse. You sold it for how much?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I sold a townhouse, and my buyer, I mean, everyone in the market was like, how did you do that? Okay, so my buyer, she was looking for over a year for a house.
She's very specific on what she wanted.
She wanted a 2-2 in a neighborhood, Avalon Park, and 32828. She knew exactly what she wanted. She wanted to be near her grandchildren and her son. And so she didn't want anything else. She was paying cash. She had absolutely no problem paying cash as long as it met the criteria. It was in the right neighborhood and everything. So what happened was we looked for a year, and then her husband got sick, and so we went back and started looking a year later, and still we couldn't find what she was looking for. So I started to door knock on every house.
Yep, you're like, hey, my buyer likes your house.
I told everyone, I put little sticky notes. I was like, guys, my buyer really likes exactly your house. If you're looking to sell, or if you know somebody who's looking to sell in this area, please let us know. And so I just went door knocking. I mean, that's why door knocking is good sometimes, because you really...
And if you have a kid, bring your kid with you.
Oh, yeah.
Dress them up. Yeah, it totally disarms them. It's like, oh my God, they're so cute. Younger kid, teenager, you might want to live at home.
Okay, so basically what I did is I door knocked, I found the right house, and so they were selling the home for more than anyone could believe at the time. You know, the other agents that I talked to, they kind of laughed and they thought, that's absolutely ridiculous. They're asking for that much for this home. Well, my buyer was willing to pay it. Here's when an appraisal doesn't matter. She was paying cash. So she didn't care how much the home was worth. And that's when that emotional value comes more into play than that appraised value, because she didn't need an appraisal. She was
it
paying
$10,000 over or 20? It was pretty high.
Well, she bought the home for $190,000. The houses at the time were going between $175 to $180. It was a townhome, 2-2, like 1,100 square feet. None of them were going for that much. So of course, everyone and all the real estate agents in that area were like, Dee, how did you get your buyer to buy a house for that much? I said, because she didn't care how much it was. She wanted to live there with that criteria.
And you're going to meet all kind of different buyers too. That like some are like, oh my God, get me in the best deal. Some are like, I have the cash, I'll pay more.
Yeah.
I want what I want, and that's what she was.
Yeah. So in that situation, she didn't need an appraisal. So let's go ahead and talk about when you need an appraisal, though.
Okay.
So the appraisal only is legally required when you are financing a deal. So what that means is when you are getting a loan for your home. So if you're paying cash, you don't have to have an appraisal.
And most people are going to get loans. You're not going to come across a lot of cash buyers. Right. Although you will, but it's going to be about 1 to 10, 1 to 12 ratio.
Yeah, exactly. But when you need an appraisal, sometimes it's just going to hit the fan where it comes in like $10,000 less. And so I've had a situation where one of my buyers, they went under contract for $175,000, but the appraisal came back at $165,000, and it was a little tricky because they were out of town, so they had their power of attorney, aka their nephew, taking care of all of the negotiations with me, or on behalf of her. And so again, this is $10,000 less, and it's kind of huge for such a low price point. You're going from 175 to 165,000.
That is, it's not like we're talking 750 and up here.
Exactly.
That's true.
So they're not saying, oh, it's pennies. Although the buyer, the actual buyer of this house, she didn't really mind, but the power of attorney, or the nephew, he did mind, and he really wanted to play hardball. So basically, in this situation, we had to go back to the negotiation table and say, okay, what are you guys willing to do? Now, this is a really good example, because what ended up happening is the listing agent came back to me and said, hey, listen, my buyer and my seller, and the seller just happened to be a real estate attorney, so he knew a lot about the industry. He said, she said he wants you to basically take some of the appraised value, and instead of meeting halfway, out of your own commission. Guys, don't ever do this.
Never.
Ever.
Never.
Ever.
Wait, what was that?
Ever.
Never.
You do not get involved with your commission and what you're paying or what you're getting paid. Do not use that as leverage.
And here's why. As the real estate agent, and for you non-realtors, and hear me out. You're not working a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
That $3,000 check, $6,000, $7,000, $10,000, whatever it may be, that's your check. You're not getting $1,000 every other week or every month like everyone else. That has to go towards your food, towards the marketing of the home, towards your life. So people, they tend to see, wow, they're getting $6,000 from me. They must have tons of money. That's not always the case, especially with developing and new agents.
I will say this. I have saved the deal by giving a portion of my commission to people who were buying a home as they were selling theirs, because I knew that that would make the difference between their closing costs on this home and then buying another one. I've done that. But if you have a situation where the seller is actually just blatantly asking you because they simply don't want to play hardball, that's their fault.
Exactly.
Do not negotiate your commission under those circumstances. Do not negotiate your commission. So again, the seller wanted me to cut my commission. And when I asked the listing agent, well, are you cutting your commission? And she said, yes, I am. I thought that was very unfortunate, but I wasn't going to do the same. So what you do is say, hey, actually, that's not what you need to do. Or, excuse me, that's not what I'm going to do. You don't tell them. The listing agent can do whatever they want. Or the other agent, the other party can do whatever they want. You just tell them, yeah, I'm not willing to do that. So, this is what you say when any party wants you to negotiate. First of all, you say, hey guys, why don't we meet halfway? That's the best thing to do in that situation. Meet halfway. It's $10,000. You come up 5. The other person comes down 5. There you go. You meet in the middle. Now, when they try to bully your client around or bully you around, these are the magic words that you use. You know what the magic words are? I love the magic words.
We have no more money to give you.
Or better yet, because you're representing your client, my client has no more money to give you. And you stop.
Drop that line. Drop it.
And then you stay silent. My client has no more money to give you.
It's beautiful.
You would be amazed, guys. It seems really simple, but you would be amazed how many people go,
wait, what? I'm not asking for money. Oh, but you are asking for money.
No, but you are.
Oh, my God.
So when you say, my client has no more money to give you, you would be amazed. And it does work. And the thing is, you're not lying. It's, hey, this is the situation. You can take it or leave it.
Here's the line. I'm not crossing it.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
So, as simple as it seems, it works. So try that. If you come into a situation where they're just like, oh, no. My client doesn't think that they have to do it. You know what? Feelings, forget the feelings. Completely take them out of the window. My client has no more money to give you.
And as a buyer's agent, you kind of have that power. As someone that's buying the home, they want to sell the home. Mm-hmm. Trust me, it's on the market because they want to sell it. So if you're coming in and you're the buyer and you've already got under the initial contract and all that jazz, they don't want to let the deal go. They don't want to have to go through the process and all that headache anymore. So you really are in control.
Yeah, because the thing is, whether you're in a buyer's market or a seller's market, unless you have a whole bunch of people saying, listen, if that person falls out, I will buy your house, which can happen in a seller's market, the buyer does have a lot of power as far as that goes. So as a buyer's agent, the best thing you can do is just represent them. You do what's in their best interest and what they've agreed upon to say, hey, this is what I want to do. Now, you want to make sure in the very beginning you're gaining your client's trust as much as possible to say, hey, I'm here to work for you, because you will get a lot of clients, especially if they're first-time home buyers, that don't really want to lay all their cards out on the table with you, but they should be laying the cards out on the table with you because you've given them so much value where they trust that you have their best interest.
Yep.
So those are two situations, very long-winded, but all of this very true. And an inspection, you just provide the information. It's really easy, guys. With renegotiating when the shit hits the fan, you just want to give the information how it is. You want to be as objective as possible. The issue that I've seen personally as an agent is a lot of agents aren't objective. They can't take themselves away from the issue. And I've done it myself, because you want it to close, you want to pay bills, right? But you've got to just take a step back and say, hey.
Well, that's exactly when deals start falling apart. Exactly. Is when you get attached.
When you have that shortage mentality.
Because it's your job regardless. I mean, if you can't pay your bills, oh well.
Right.
I mean,
you really do have to go into real estate and say it's okay, because it's going to work out for everyone. But you do have to remember who this is affecting more than anything. And it's not you. It's the people that you're there representing. You're there to help them find a house. And here's a magic word you can always use with your client so they know that you have their best interest. You can just tell them, guys, listen, I won't be living in the house for the next 20 years. You are. So my decision or my opinion doesn't matter nearly as much as yours. And they'll know you have their best interest. And that's what's really important.
That's true.
So those are the situations that you might run into when the shit hits the fan and how to negotiate them. And a little bit of extra there.
All right. Well, that's it.
Guys, thank you so much.
That is a wrap.
Yeah, thank you for joining us today for episode 3 of the Follow Me Show. Be sure to check us out again soon, and we will talk to you soon.